As Somalia prepares to swap an international peacekeeping force for a local one, there are concerns their withdrawal might just be the opening Al-Shabaab is looking to exploit. I'm Imran Garda, and today on the Newsmakers, we look at whether the African Union can say mission accomplished in Somalia. Drought-plagued Somalia could easily rival Afghanistan when it comes to the intensity of its protracted civil war. Lording over the scorched earth are more than 100 clan-affiliated militias, but none as powerful as Al-Shabaab, a US-designated terror group. Among those on the ground charged with fighting Al-Shabaab is an African Union mission known as Amisom. Established just over a decade ago and largely funded by the US, Amisom is made up of African Union soldiers with a UN-sanctioned mandate to maintain peace, ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid, and help keep Al-Shabaab in check. But they're scheduled to leave in 2021, and these days are busy training their replacements. So will Amisom's withdrawal bring peace to Somalia, or leave the nation's people and the new troops in charge of protecting them even more vulnerable? Adam Pletz went to Somalia. Here's what he found.
People in Mogadishu seem cautiously optimistic. There's life in the streets and a sense that commerce is returning. It's transformed since the Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group Al-Shabaab, which had controlled the city, was forced out in 2012. The African Union mission in Somalia, also called Amisom, has largely been credited for restoring security. But its 20,000 soldiers are scheduled to leave in 2021. And there are questions as to whether the Somali army is ready to take their place. At a base outside Mogadishu, soldiers from Amisom's Ugandan contingent prepare for a patrol.
Wadbeli, our role as the Uganda People's Defense Forces, Amisom, is to enable the federal government of Somalia defeat Al-Shabaab, who are terrorizing innocent civilians.
Another objective is to train the Somali National Army.
And actually, we are mentoring them so that they take up the task, the responsibility of liberating Somalia. The Congo Somalia entirely lies in their hands.
On the patrol, he's upbeat about the transition to Somali army control.
They are doing well. If it remains like that, Somalia will be liberated.
Off camera, other officers are less optimistic. One tells me Somali soldiers can be with Al-Shabaab one day and the army the next. But none speak more frankly than the Ugandan contingent commander. So as of now, in 2021, the Somali army would not be ready?
It's not. At this rate, no. I'll give you an example. We were supposed to have hit certain milestones by June. We haven't done what we were supposed to have finished in June. So we are short by like 4 months. It's going to take time, more time than that.
Nonetheless, he's confident that ground is being made in the transition to Somali control.
Just last week, more than 100 officers commissioned from our cadet school. So there is progress. There is progress. A lot of progress.
At the Defense Ministry, the communications director seems assured the army is ready for the transition. So Amisom's going to leave Somalia in just 2 years, in 2021. Do you really think the Somali army is ready to take on the responsibilities that they've had here up until now? That's the responsibilities of 20,000 soldiers.
Yeah, of course. They are ready and they are more hope. And we see Somalia having the troops on the ground. So we are not losing the hope. Yeah.
But the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs is more cautious.
When I believe Somali force will be able to take the control of that place. Not now, but with the times coming, they are preparing to do that, yeah. It's a long way to go, but we will succeed.
The Somali government acknowledges it would not exist without Amisom, but seems to recognize the mission cannot continue indefinitely. By some estimates, more than 1,800 African Union soldiers have been killed, and the financial cost is mounting. What we've learned is that if Amisom are really going to leave in 2021, then there's still plenty of work to be done before Somali forces are ready to replace their 20,000 troops. And there may well be considerable pressure for the African Union soldiers to remain. Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
To discuss this now, I'm joined from London by Abdulaziz Ali Ibrahim Xildhiban. He's a former Somali government spokesman. In Seattle is Mohamud Yussuf, a journalist and political commentator specializing in Somali affairs. And Matt Bryden joins us from Nairobi. He's a former coordinator for the UN Monitoring Group on Somalia and currently the executive chairman of Sahan Research, a think tank focused on Africa and the Middle East. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Abdulaziz Ali Ibrahim Xildhiban, let's start with you. So we've had Al-Shabaab recently conduct roadside blasts. There have been 2 attacks on Monday, a kind of double tap, very well coordinated. Should we really be thinking about Amisom setting a timetable to leave in under 2 years?
Very good afternoon. I think this is a very dramatic moment in Somalia. I don't think that Amisom has been doing enough what they were supposed to do back in 2011. As far as you know, Al-Shabaab has been defeated. Let me correct you. Al-Shabaab has been defeated back in 2011 when the former Somali President Sheikh Ahmed was in charge. And the Somali forces at the time were, and plus the African Union troops, Amisom, were ready to defeat Al-Shabaab. But since they were forced to flee from Mogadishu, and the Somali governments, including the current governments, were not fighting enough Al-Shabaab, and it is not that much difficult that Al-Shabaab one day will think about it, taking the power of Somalia, where now, as you understand, the current president, Mohammed Farmajo, is sitting. For one reason that I would like to make it, Al-Shabaab infiltrates the entire government structure. Society distrusts the government, and the government feel disfranchised because few elites benefit from the government system.
Okay, Mr. Xildhiban. So you say 2011 they kicked out of Mogadishu, but now they're re-emerging, they're attacking at will, and there's a genuine fragility. Mohamud Yussuf, so when we look at Amisom's role within it, is Somalia really in the right position to start saying, okay, we're gonna have Amisom and these tens of thousands of international troops hand over to local Somali forces? Is this something that they shouldn't be doing right now?
Thank you, Imran. Good morning from Seattle. And I'm glad to be here today. And I want to say something before I answer your question. And we, as a community in Seattle, have met the current ambassador of Somalia, an American ambassador to Somalia, and Yamamoto, who lives just 2 miles away from where I live right now in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So we have debated this issue many, many times. And we were hoping at this time the Amisom troops will be out of Somalia. Amisom troops is the one that created Al-Shabaab, the first place. And Al-Shabaab existence also depend on Amisom troops. So I believe the Somali army are ready to handle their security.
But Mohammed, isn't that naive? Isn't that naive to think that once Amisom just ups and leaves, Al-Shabaab will say, oh, we have no reason to fight anymore, so we're just going to put down our weapons. They're going to go for the kill, aren't they?
I don't think so, because, Al-Shabaab gets support because of the presence of African Union troops, especially when you have Ethiopia and Kenya in Somalia, who have interest in Somalia. That's what makes Al-Shabaab stronger. That's my thinking.
I see. Matt Bryden, does Mohammed make a point that perhaps the presence of those international troops causes more problems than solutions?
And that has been the case in years past, but I think right now, the reality is that if Amisom troops leave anytime soon, there is no effective force or even authority that could withstand Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is not just a military problem. It's a state within a state. And even government officials have recently acknowledged that it collects taxes more effectively in Mogadishu than the government does. It runs a parallel justice system, even in areas under government control. It has an extremely elaborate administrative structure. So this is a question both of government legitimacy and authority, and the need for Somalia to come to a comprehensive political settlement, which is still far off. Mm-hmm. And then a military problem. And frankly, most of the fighting against Al-Shabaab outside Mogadishu, beyond Mogadishu, is done by forces in Somalia's regions that are loyal to the federal member states, not the Somali National Army, which right now is woefully underprepared to take over its responsibilities.
Abdulaziz, if we had to take out the US support, take out the EU support, and take out the support from AU countries, the Ugandans and Ethiopians and others, if we had to just pluck them out of this whole thing, would the Somali National Army be slaughtered by Shabab?
I agree with Mike Bryden what he was saying. The current Somali government is not fighting with Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab, the administration, which is like Jubaland, Puntland, are those who are fighting against Al-Shabaab. Let me make one thing very clear. If Al-Shabaab leaves very soon, there is, without proper and disciplined army, Somali army, it is highly likely to see the return of clan warfare as the soldiers will become clan militias. I think the problem, what my friend in America was saying was not that right, as he was saying, like, the problem is the presence of the Amisom troops in Somalia. I do apologize what he has said, because Amisom fought against Al-Shabaab, and as far as you know, thousands of their men and women have died to liberate certain areas in Somalia, including Mogadishu. I would not say that. What I'm saying is that the current government was not fighting since the president, Mohammed Farmajo, was elected back in 2017. In 2 years and a half, one single area has not been liberated. And now, according to most of the Somalis, are now trying to blame the international community. The international community, including America and the United States, the European Union, and the rest of the world, including thanks to the government of Turkey, has been training and has been trying to make better Somali forces. But as far as I know, those whom I was the advisor of the Internal Security Minister of Somalia and the spokesperson. Those whom we have been fighting with now are in charge. I mean, they don't need that much power tomorrow to move in the government buildings. Now Al-Shabaab is almost is controlling in the current government of Somalia.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Mohamud Yussuf, we have the perspective from London that it's less about Amisom, less about the international or multinational forces, and more about the inability of the current Somali leadership to lead properly, which is seeing this resurgence of Shabab and giving them the opportunity to attack at will. Address that for me.
I have been in Somalia 2017, and I happened to be at the Prime Minister's office. When I was going there, I passed 3 checkpoints. The 2 first checkpoints I passed, I saw Somali army guarding there. The last one, I only saw 2 Amisom soldiers. So, Abdulaziz, I respect his opinion, but I believe some of the Amisom troops, in fact, contributing to the problem. For example, Kenya now at Jubaland, it's not helping Somalia security and interest. All I know, they are there for their own interests, and that angers Somali community, and also can help Al-Shabaab more and more. So we know what's happening in Jubaland and Kismayo. The charcoal are illegally exported. So what they are doing is not helping Somalia, it's in fact harming Somalis. So I believe our army are ready to take their own security. That's what I think.
So you would want Amisom to leave tomorrow?
I think if they leave, we are ready. You know, I think if you say they will stay there, that's an insult to Somali security forces. So Somalis are known to secure their own security.
Great to get your perspective from Seattle. This is where we thank you and bring someone else in for a different perspective. Let's bring into the conversation now counterterrorism specialist David Otto, who is standing by for us in Nairobi. David, you've been listening to everything that's been said over the past few minutes preceding your entry. Who's right? Is Mohammed right that Amisom's maybe causing more harm than good?
I think what Mohammed is saying is that the mission of Amisom had to be parallel. I mean, the first mission was to ensure that Al-Shabaab was driven out of Mogadishu and to give the Somalian authority to be able to defend their territory. I mean, this is an asymmetric warfare. But of course, Amisom has been there for almost 12 years now, since 2007. And that is a long time that it becomes counterproductive, because it then, points to a point at which, it appears as if the Somalian government is unable to defend its territory. So that itself is problematic. And that buys very much into the narrative of Al-Shabaab, which, according to them, the presence of not just Amisom, but other multinational helpers within the country, it's some kind of an invasion of Somalia, and therefore they use that as one of the reasons why they carry out the attacks. Right. But of course, you have seen the targets of the attacks has been towards these forces. Of course, the October 2017 was an exception, and it killed a number of people. And that also points to the fact that the presence of Amisom, it's no longer necessary at this point. Okay. Considering that the 300 million that is spent a month on operations, if you gave Somalia half of that amount, in 5 years, they would be able to deal with Al-Shabaab and some of their grievances.
Matt Bryden, do you undercut Al-Shabaab's ideological influence or their ability to spin it ideologically, at least, when foreign troops leave? So come 2021, if they go according to this timetable, if international troops leave, Al-Shabaab can't turn to people and say that we have a foreign occupation. Is that overplayed, or is that really significant in taking the sting out of the insurgency?
I don't think that narrative really has much traction in much of Somalia. The Jubaland administration, where the Kenyan Defense Forces are, is grateful for the support of the KDF. The Ethiopians have long been supporters and welcomed in the Somali regional states. That is changing now as Ethiopia aligns itself with the Somali federal government. The issue is that Somalia is, first of all, at least half of the country is still free reign for Al-Shabaab. They have a presence across most of southern Somalia, where there is no Somali National Army. The forces fighting them are local forces, and the army is not in a position to deploy across a territory that large. Secondly, the Somali federal government is currently devoting more efforts, greater attention, to fighting with its own federal member states than to fighting Al-Shabaab. And what this is doing is creating a political rupture that Al-Shabaab can exploit, and any other entity hostile to Somalia can exploit. So right now, Somalia's pathway forward is based on an agreement, a national security architecture, in which the federal government and the federal member states share the responsibility for security. The federal government has abandoned that agreement, and that means that the possibility of a coherent, unified national response to Al-Shabaab is absent. Amisom is trapped in the middle It ideally should leave, but unless the Somali federal government member states can agree on a common platform, Amisom is stuck. If it withdraws, Kismayo will fall, Baidoa will fall, and Shabab will gain ground across much of the south.
Fascinating perspective. Abdulaziz, are they the type of group, when we talk about Al-Shabaab, are they the type of group that you could sit across the table from and find some sort of common ground with? Are they the type of group that you could eventually absorb into co-governance in running the country?
Please, thank you. Before I answer that question, I would like to add some information which I think is missing.
Go ahead.
And for Amisom, withdrawal is becoming more economical gains for member states, and the UN officials are not facilitating the withdrawal, because withdrawal of Amisom will follow UN agencies that directly buy Amisom funds. War on terror is now become never-ending project. To diminish terrorists will mean an end.
Okay, so you believe they're making too much money out of this? Okay, Abdulaziz. Okay,
yes,
so you believe they're making too much money to withdraw? Okay, fair enough. Let's park that aside now for the moment. Let me ask you, as a Somali politician, as someone who is a government spokesperson, when you see Shabab controlling so much land and you see them attack with impunity, long-term, for a peace process, you're going to have to deal with them in some way. Do you believe that they are the type of group that you can deal with, who will accept a democratic process?
I don't think so. What Al-Shabaab was fighting is not that much easy. Al-Shabaab is trying to impose the tape regime of Taliban in Afghanistan. And that is what I have made very clear in the past few years. Al-Shabaab is not trying to be in a government system that will allow the people of Somalia to elect democratically. Al-Shabaab is not living a democratic world. They live another world that we have never saw. And what I think is to negotiate. There is one thing that I would like to add. My view in politics, and that is, now what we have been hearing throughout the media was like the government of Afghanistan is talking with the Taliban.
Yes.
I think it is time to talk. It is time to talk with Al-Shabaab in Somalia, because I can see
but you're saying
the
that
international community lives.
But you're also saying that they can't be a part of the solution. What would you talk to them about if they can't be a part of the solution?
Sorry?
What would you talk to them about if you believe that they cannot be a part of the solution?
They cannot be part of the solution. It is very clear. I think, the solution is, there is two single ways. There is two ways that the solution will be founded. We are not, I'm not trying to mislead the Somali people and the rest of the world. I'm trying to make them understand what we need to do.
Could you please briefly give us the two solutions, sir? We're running out of time. Please, very briefly, sir. We've got 2 minutes left on the program.
Okay.
Thank you.
What I think is right is, one, to negotiate. Otherwise, to fight with them and defeat them.
Okay, David Otto, help me understand what Shabab would be thinking here. If, generally speaking, there's a timetable of 2021 for Amisom to leave, and some of those countries don't want to deal with this anymore, they would rather get out and focus on their own problems, would Shabab be thinking we just have to wait this out when the Somali government is then weaker, and then we can really go for it?
Of course, Al-Shabaab would be having all these options, especially because they see the weakness of the Somalian authority to defend its territory. And that is why it was important that since 2007, the Amisom forces would have done their job to strengthen the Somalian military to be able to secure their country. But that has not happened. And there is a deadline for 2021. And that doesn't seem to be the case that the Somalian forces would be fully ready. But the truth is, the Amisom forces cannot stay in Somalia forever. Of course, Uganda, Somalia, Ethiopia, Burundi, and Kenya, they're all there to defend, their own interests because, of worries that Al-Shabaab may spread into their country. But the important thing is to allow the Somalians to deal with this problem because Al-Shabaab, who are they? Most of them are Somalians. Of course, you have jihadists coming from elsewhere to join them, but they are Somalians, and let the Somalian government be given the capacity to deal with this issue. And I think that is very important.
Right.
Thinking about whatever Al-Shabaab thinks is not important. I think what is important,
David,
is let the Somalian authority be allowed, to deal with this Al-Shabaab issue themselves.
David, I've got to wrap, unfortunately, but it's been a pleasure getting all your myriad perspectives here on the Newsmakers. David Otto, Matt Bryden, Abdulaziz, Ali Ibrahim, Xildhiban, and earlier Mohamud Yussuf. Thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of the Newsmakers. Bye-bye.